Right, let's talk about the other semi-final. So the other semi-final was the EDG GenG one. Right, coming in, I actually also found this very interesting. Mainly because of how much discussion after quarters was about, like, LCK is stronger and wow, look at all these Korean teams. And obviously, GenG and BDD did individually and as a team sort of overperform, impress people. I found a lot of people all of a sudden, they hadn't just bailed on the other LPL teams, dude. They bailed on EDG and I saw people, like a lot of analysts even picking GenG, people thinking that they were going to win the series. What were your thoughts coming into this one?
I was actually, I thought it would be about this close, because I really had begun to think, and I think you've seen it in the game, these teams are actually quite similar in basically where their like strengths are and stuff, and things like that. And they step on top of each other's toes a lot, which was quite interesting to see how that was expressed in draft. I definitely thought, just due to current form, EDG would win. Just because of like how the bot lane like match up, and how would they call it, like Flandre is able to just like coast through like lane and not be like punished, and GenG don't know how to play around top lane, then like that's like the perfect team thing for EDG. If Flandre's not getting punished for like doing very, very strange things top lane, then like that's already a plus for EDG. Actually, in the server and watching the games themselves, I was really surprised on how close like a lot of the games were and how like evenly matched the teams seemed to be. But it was overall about expectations. It was nice of EDG to figure out that if you take Clid off Lee Sin, he's half as good a player. That was interesting. Yeah, it took them 3 games and then eventually they worked it out.
Yes, I will say, if you've watched his career, he's another one of those players where it's like, it wouldn't even matter how in meta that champion is, just don't give him it. Like, that is one of the ones he smurfs on. Now, on the other side, though, because if people don't know, you are someone who's obviously, I mean, they should guess it by the like comment earlier, you're someone who obviously appreciates the LPL, right? One of the players that, normally the LPL gets like the fucking world's nerf minus like Uzi for some bizarre reason, like one player. The player who's got the fucking world's buff from LPL's JJ, this guy. When I watched him in LPL, he was never going to be like a contender for best jungler. Seems like he's been very good in this tournament.
Well, yeah, it was crazy. The series before, EDG won against RNG with Viper and Scout both playing badly. They played terribly basically the whole series, and JJ just was playing like very, very, very well. He like carried the 2 people who were supposed to be his hard carries completely through that series. And then in this GenG EDG, the GenG EDG series, I thought there was loads of sections of like the game where like he's like, you can see he's like massively overskilled. There's certain aspects to his like team fighting and stuff that are very, very, very elite. He's very, very good mechanically, but there's loads of things because he's a rookie and an amateur that you can see how it's expressed in EDG's gameplay. Because like, yeah, you can't criticize something that doesn't exist. EDG do not set up for Drakes. They literally show up to dragons and they let Clid walk up to the dragon and smite steal it away from them at least once every single game, and they've done it at Baron like numerous times. They do not set up. They don't set up like flank wards, they don't scout and stuff, and it's a real weakness in the game, and I think a lot of that comes from Mako not being on engaged supports and Roman supports because he's having to be put on enchanters. And JJ's just general like inexperience of like warding the map and knowing that, and that's in his role. But for like a guy in his first season who's got very demanding laners like Flandre, I think he's actually doing very, very well.
Right. Obviously, this was another matchup. I mean, one thing, like, if you're a Korean enthusiast is, let's be real, if mid lane, in theory, was the best role historically, all 4 players in the mid lane in the semis were Korean mid laners, although, to be fair, I don't really count Scout as an LCK mid lane. He barely fucking played in the league. But in this particular matchup, Scout against BDD, the other thing is, as you mentioned, Scout didn't look that great in the RNG series, and let's be real, because he was playing against Crying, everyone expected him to just dumpster him. Obviously, BDD actually was, I mean, a lot of people would probably have said he was looking like the second best mid in the tournament. He was looking really good, ahead of, God forbid, Chovy, and then obviously Faker wasn't really even playing for himself most of the tournament. But in this particular series, I thought it was a really interesting contrast, actually, because if you look, basically they just got the champions they like. Like, Scout had his fucking Rise, and BDD had his Azir, and basically it's like they kind of got to do their thing. So how did you think the mid lane matchup went?
So it was really interesting because both EDG and GenG So they had to introduce, how I was talking about previously, there was like the 4, like LeBlanc, Rise and stuff. Well, in this series, Syndra had to be introduced because Syndra is so oppressive into Scout's champion pool and vice versa. And so it actually opened up a lot of like the picks and stuff. So we actually seen a lot more pick diversity. We've seen like a Zoe game each and a Zir game. Yes. There was even a Victor. We had Seraphine in the other game. So that, like, because you had this additional ban, you had an extra hero leaking through the pool, and you began to see the mid pool beginning to open up a lot more. So that was really good. This basically series for me was kind of defined by like Scout would have like a crazy monster game where he'd like hard carry loads and loads of team fights, and then BDD would then go and take over a game with Clid and like hard carry the map and take over the game, and then Scout would come back and do it in the next again game. They were basically taking turns around of basically being the best players on the server. Scout's team fighting in this series, I think, was very, very, very good. There was a lot of games where Viper was like misusing his ult or not actually within damage range, and like Scout's taking on like 3 people in the back line and killing 2 of them. It was some really impressive stuff.
Yes, I would say, like, I would characterize it as this was like the heavyweight slug fest, you know, where one guy's blasting one guy with the haymaker and then the other guy hits him with the other one, and, you know, people just get to it. Basically, it was a series for the fans. If you're a fan of mid lane play, you'll just get to watch people just style and just go ham, which I do enjoy watching. Right, what we'll do now is to start to look ahead, and then obviously we'll do the direct matchup of Damwon and EDG. One thing that does concern me is when I made my pick before the let me think. I think it was after maybe RNG played against EDG. I think I did a tweet where I said EDG would win Worlds, and I've explained this previously, so I won't go into it, but just in case you never saw it. Basically, I do think on paper Damwon's the best team and they should win. This was a prediction of like it could. Basically, I was finding a way another team other than Damwon could win. At the time, Team 1 didn't look as strong, and I just think EDG on paper have the pieces to do it. But that's exactly where I want to get into this with you, dude. Because first of all, on paper, Mako and Viper, that's a bot lane that should be able to go against Ghost and Beryl. Also, I agree with you. If I look with the eye test and I take the nameplates off, I would obviously say the T1 bot lane played the best so far in this tournament. So actually, Viper and Mako is kind of just still on paper for me. But on paper, by the way, Viper and Mako is an unfucking real bot lane. I mean, look at that. You've got one of the greatest ever Chinese/LPL support players. And then you've got one of the absolute best Korean and I would say hard carry fucking ADCs in Viper. But I have to say, the on-paper part is what worries me at the moment. I think you hit a key point there in terms of the Mako angle, right? Which is, Mako can't really play some of the champions in this meta at the moment that you typically think of, right? It's not really the kind, like, this isn't what you'd be playing in the LPL. So, basically, is that main condition, the idea that the bot lane could heavily fuck up the Damwon bot lane, is that even here in the tournament going into the final, do you think?
See, this is the crazy thing. Mako is I actually think personally Mako is good at these enchanter supports. I actually don't think he like makes a lot of like mistakes and stuff. But then you have to ask yourself, there's a bigger picture. The team's not good at using them and utilising them.
Right.
EDG fundamentally as a team aren't a good team when Mako's on enchanters. And so you want to, when you're going into this final, they're going to want to, I think you should play the best version of yourself. Know thyself. And you should give yourself the best, like, what you think is the best chance and not be so much of like a meta slave. Because, to be honest, mate, if I'm looking at, I don't really care. Outside of you, mate, I don't really care what Beryl's on. As long as, like, Mako and Viper are going to have good role agency, I think that's the key thing we should be trying to get for as Edward Gaming. So you've seen it in the last game where they actually put Mako on Leona. Would you call it? I think they look perfectly fine, even though, like, the engage supports are going out of the meta. Like, I think it looked great. I would just continue to do that. Have Mako Viper on kill condition bot lanes and have Mako roam a bit more and have him on engage. Because JJ's engages are so much better when he's like the secondary engage angle and Mako's like the lead. So I think it just makes EDG a better version of themselves.
Okay. And obviously you kind of hit it earlier. I have to say, if coming into Worlds, many of us would have said Viper is, you know, the best JDC in the world. I'm sure he would have even been considered the best player in the world overall. I don't feel like I've really seen him at Worlds be that. And I will say, it does feel like, as much as this bot lane angle's been hyped across a bunch of teams, it doesn't seem like ADC's been that impactful over the tournament.
Yeah, definitely. Viper's like shat the bed this world. Like if the EDG went on to win it, like contextually, I wouldn't really see it as like the crowning pinnacle of his individual play. It was more regular season and playoffs and LPL where he was at his best. He's not really came to play at this world. He's been getting caught a lot on really mobile ADCs. He sometimes is getting handed like really icky situations where they had that game where he was the only person engaging on Lucian. It was crazy actually having to watch that where they were engaging with culling on Lucian. But he's been overextending loads, getting very, very greedy. He's not super impressed me, but that could like change like going into the final and Viper could just murder that bot lane by himself. But yeah, he's not been great at all.